with Dr. Wade, and we are going to talk a little bit about her journey as a veterinarian, going through vet school, and her experiences being a Black woman in vet med. I think it's a really important topic to bring up, especially as we're, in the middle of Black History Month, and I think the current statistic is 1.2% of veterinarians are Black. And being a Black woman in veterinary medicine is even rarer. And I couldn't even find a statistic on it. That's how kind of rare it is. So we're going to get into a little bit of everything today. So, Dr. Wade, could you tell us a little more about yourself?
Yes, I am Dr. Alexia Wade. I am initially from Nashville, Tennessee. I went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville for both my undergrad and my veterinary school. And then I found an internship at the clinic that I currently practice at in the Fort Worth area of Texas. And so I did a mixed animal rotating internship for a year directly out of school, and decided to stay in mixed animal medicine where I've been practicing for the last about 2 years or so. And I really like mixed animal medicine because it's never the same thing every day, especially being in rural mixed animal medicine where I feel like we get to see a little bit more variety as far as kind of the hecticness of everything.
So, going through your history, could you tell us more about what made you want to apply to veterinary school and what was your path specifically? We have a lot of pre-vets in our audience and they would love to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there was, unfortunately, but fortunately, no other option for me as far as I knew that I loved animals as soon as I knew what a dog or cat was. My grandmother on my mom's side was always, she got me my first hamster. She got me my first bunny rabbit. So she was always kind of feeding into that dream of mine. And I knew that I wanted to help animals. The tough part is I really didn't know how I was going to accomplish that. I knew what a veterinarian was, but I didn't know how to get into vet school. I didn't know any of those things. And so I think a lot of it for me was self-driven. And I think that maybe made the process a little bit harder. And I think that's why I advocate for being there for other pre-veterinary students, especially Black pre-veterinary students, because I want to show people that, yes, the path is hard, but there are ways you can make this more accessible to yourself. And so I essentially started looking at colleges in high school. I went to an academic specific high school because I knew veterinarians are smart and I have to be smart and I have to do good in school. So I went to an academic high school, and I went to a lot of the job fairs and career fairs and college fairs and all of the things just to kind of learn more about how do I even get to vet school. And so figured out that I wanted to stay at least in Tennessee for college. So I think I applied to a school in Georgia and I applied to a school in Tennessee too. And same for vet school. But I decided I wanted to stay at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. While I was at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, thank goodness they have a animal science major with a pre-veterinary concentration. And so really I just kind of followed the path that they gave me. Of course, I did things outside of school, which I always try to emphasize to anyone who is following the pre-vet path. We are veterinarians through and through, and we love animals, but everyone knows that we love animals. And so I encourage everyone to do things outside of school that also make you happy. And so I joined a sorority in undergrad, and I also was an ambassador for the College of Agriculture. And so I think that those things kind of rounded me a little bit more. And I had a lot of people in that pre-vet cohort specifically that maybe had more resources than I had or had more knowledge accessible than I did. And so I kind of leaned on them a little bit more as far as applying to vet school, doing the VMCAS. I didn't even know what a VMCAS was, like taking my GRE, all of those things. The school part of it wasn't necessarily hard. It was the figuring out how the heck to make all the puzzle pieces fit together. And so luckily I did it. Luckily, I thank God I got accepted to University of Tennessee on my first try and got through vet school there. Even in vet school and ending vet school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't always want to be a mixed animal vet. I wanted to do zoo med and I wanted to do wildlife at first. But then kind of through school learned that that's just really not accessible either. And so it will always have a special place in my heart. But I think just through learning and in clinics, and that's why also I encourage people to do all the things. You may think that you want to be a small animal vet, or you may think that you want to be a large animal vet, but try everything out. You know, we have this degree and it gives us the opportunity to do so much. Don't limit yourself. And I think that's exactly why I'm in mixed animal medicine today.
I think that's a great way to put it. We're about to do something with, what do you do if you weren't accepted or if you're waitlisted or something like that. And one of the things that we were going to talk about is don't limit yourself to the small animal practice you've been working at for 5, 6, 7 years. Like, go out, try something new. And I think the point you brought up about not knowing how to apply or how to become a vet is really important, because growing up in the middle of nowhere, I didn't have any of those resources, and I came from a college educated family, well connected. Like, I don't know, in my head, I don't know how to describe it. It was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to Auburn and they're gonna let me into vet school because I went to Auburn. And that's just not how it works. Like, but in high school, nobody was there to tell me any different. That's just how I thought it worked. And that wasn't arrogance, that was genuine ignorance. Nobody talked about it. Nobody told me, you have to apply and it's really hard to get in. I thought if you got good grades and you showed you want to do it, you would just get in. And that's just not true. So I think a lot of people have that misconception going in, and that's why we see a lot of high drop rates in that first year or two, because they see what it's going to take or how long of a process it is, and then they get a little scared off. And I don't like when that happens. I wish there was more high school involvement, maybe at a national level. Something we tried to look at when we were serving with APVMA was, how do we reach younger audiences, because they're not even thinking about that. Maybe they haven't even decided they want to be a vet yet. So how do we get to them and say, here's what you need to start doing, here's what you need to start looking at? I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think there does need to be something for younger ages and actually talking about how to get in, and not just encouraging you, yes, be a vet, and not telling you anything about how to be a vet.
Exactly that. And I think living in Texas has actually exposed me to a lot of the agriculture and the side of things where a lot of these times these high school kids are actually getting the access to, showing their first cow or showing their first pig or all of these things. And these kids love these animals, and they say, how am I going to care for my pig when it's sick? Or how am I going to do these things to build the human animal bond? And I just think that that is a beautiful thing in itself. And I wish that that was honestly more accessible everywhere, because had there been an ag program for me in high school, I 100% would have done it. But I do sometimes think it's probably area dependent, and Texas is very big on agriculture. So
Yeah, especially in the Fort Worth area, the show cattle can get. I grew up in Texas and I showed pigs and goats, and my friends showed sheep, so I saw a little bit of everything. My brother showed rabbits. It is a thing, it is a big thing. And it wasn't what made me want to be a vet, but it certainly solidified it. But like I said, it was like, well, I showed animals in high school. I'll get into vet school, right? Like, I don't know, just something about, there's just a disconnect between high school and then you show up for that first, I know Auburn, our very first lecture for orientation to animal science was an entire lecture on debt to income ratio and scary, scary, scary things about becoming a vet, because they're like, we're not trying to scare you off, but we're trying to tell you these things and be realistic. If this is not attractive to you and you're not willing to sign up for this, then, first day of freshman year, you might want to switch. And people do switch after. I almost switched because I was terrified of the debt alone. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. Didn't know about that in high school. Didn't know it costed that much, but it's just crazy.
no, it is. And I definitely agree. I think that there is a lot of push back and push away from the vet field as a whole. And it's a little discouraging, because I think that at the end of the day, you're becoming a veterinarian because it's something that you're extremely passionate about. Yes, we should preface with the things that you are going to have to deal with, because it is very mentally taxing. The debt to income ratio is very real, but I think it's also one of those things where if we lay it out in a way where people can digest it a little bit more and know how they can take the appropriate steps to get to where they need to be, I think we would have a lot more successful veterinarians, to be honest, and not, 50% of people switching out of pre-vet freshman year.
Yeah, and
Oh, definitely.
it gets even scarier when you start talking about the loan caps, and we already have an episode on that. So if you want to know more about that, go check that out. But the point is, it gets scarier as we continue on and it gets more exclusive. And I think it's been getting more exclusive because, not to generalize, but a lot of, in my personal experience, the people of color and people from rural communities and people who just have diverse backgrounds, if you didn't grow up in a very niche, like high income white household, it's already really hard to pay for undergrad, let alone vet school. And your access to certain things are limited. You know, when they talk about diversity of experience, I had a hard time getting that in high school or going home for the summer. I only had one vet practice within like a 40-mile radius. That's just the world, you know? And I know I'm not the only person who can say that. I know there are plenty of communities that have one practice and maybe it's only small animal, and it's hard to diversify experiences, it's hard to get in, you're cut off financially. There's just a lot going on right now. And switching gears a little bit, it all comes back to, representation. Somebody needs to be there to say, you can do it. If you're from the middle of nowhere, that doesn't mean you're not going to fit in with all of these small animal medicine people. If you're from a lower income household, that doesn't mean you're not going to fit in veterinary medicine. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about representation in the field as a Black veterinarian or growing up, and maybe seeing or not seeing people who inspired you to do what you do.
Yeah, that is a very, very big topic in vet med, because there is such a lack of representation. And, I posted a video on Instagram basically saying, the reason why I finally made a veterinary Instagram is because I did not meet my first Black veterinarian in the real world until a clinical externship. So my fourth year in vet school, I was externing at a emergency hospital in Georgia, and there were multiple Black doctors. And when I tell you, I was really speechless, to be honest. I was like, this exists? This not only one Black doctor, but multiple Black doctors in one hospital. I mean, in vet school, there was me and one other student in a class of 110 people. And it just not, I'm not going to say that it's not what I expected, to be honest with you, because I grew up, I went to a magnet academic middle school where I only had a couple of Black friends. I went to an academic magnet high school that was more diverse, but still not very many Black people. And of course, and on top of that, not many Black people that wanted to be veterinarians. And so it's like I can relate to you in the real world, but I can't relate to you in what I want to do. And it just kind of sucked, to be honest with you. It sucked. But now I think this has fueled me to just want to be a small part of that representation and, do everything that I can to show Black girls and Black boys out there that you can do this. You absolutely can do this. And whatever I need to do to help you not only believe in yourself, but to make this more accessible for you, I want to do that. Again, because this is already such a hard field to get into for anyone. And then you add the non-access of being a Black person to that, and it makes it even tougher. It is very, very tough. And I am very thankful to have not only worked with one other, I had one Black intern mate, but now I've got 4 Black interns that work under me, and it is amazing. I mean, it is to walk into work and again know that I can relate to you culturally and I can relate to you in the workplace, and we can go through these things together. Me being out of school for almost 3 years now, and them just getting out of school and knowing that I can even be somewhat of a mentor to them, I think just means everything to me.
I would love to talk to you about that, how you now have interns working under you. So I go to University of Missouri. I went to U of I, Urbana-Champaign for undergrad. It's incredibly diverse at U of I because you are getting everyone from Chicagoland. And I loved it because I felt like I got to experience a little bit of the world. St. Louis, Missouri is not as diverse. So that's why I chose U of I, and I loved it. Now that I'm back in Missouri, I feel the weight of having a less diverse class significantly, especially with what's going on in the world. And I want to say, I don't like that I'm not a part of having more voices around me and having more diverse opinions. And I think we need people who are in the majority to recognize that. Like, I am the typical white girl who grew up in the suburbs, applied to veterinary school. My class was not incredibly diverse in high school. In college it was, but I believe in educating ourselves and the voices that are not in the room who need to be in the room. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, and thank you for not only kind of recognizing the privilege that you have, but taking that and saying, I want to be a part of the change. I think that's very important.
Thanks. I would love to talk about, you had a post saying that you were first generation doctor. I have a friend who had a similar experience to you. When she was applying to veterinary school, you know, she did some research. Michaela, like you were talking about, she got good grades. She worked at a couple clinics. She thought she had done everything to the T that she was going to get in. But because she lacked mentorship and accessibility, she didn't know how much you had to have, like the gap that existed because of lack of accessibility. And so she actually stepped away from the field after getting rejected her first time for 5 years and then came back, got into 8 schools. I would say, like, these gaps can cause, like, she is phenomenal. She's one of the best people in our entire class. I just can't believe that lack of access would cause someone to maybe not come back into the field.
Yeah, and I think that's a very real thing, and it's a very tough thing to digest because there's so much more than just applying to vet school. You know, there's so much beneath the surface level that you don't realize until you kind of get into the thick of it and you say, well, now I have to pay for these applications. Now I have to travel to multiple places to interview to these places. Now I have to provide housing accommodations when I go and interview for all these places. It's a lot. It's a lot mentally, you know. How do I make myself look good on this application? What are they even looking for? You know, I make good grades, but what else? What else? What do I even say in my interview? What am I going to do when I don't get in? Well, if I don't get in, what am I going to do? There's just all of these things that go into it that you really don't know unless you maybe know someone that's been through it, or you have, again, the resources to know these things. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. And again, that's why I am so thankful for that pre-vet cohort at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, because I just feel like there were so many things that I did not know that, because everyone was talking about it. There was the first clinic that I worked at, which again, I didn't even know that I needed to work at a clinic to get into vet school, to be honest with you, or have clinical experience. I did not. I was like, well, I love animals. It's like, that makes me a great candidate. I know I want to be a vet. But I had heard of kind of at least 2 different people in my pre-veterinary cohort that had gotten a job at this one small animal clinic, and they would just kind of talk about it. And I just kind of talked with them one day, like, hey, do you know if they're still hiring? Because I knew that they were applying to vet school too. And they said, yeah. And so 4 of us total, all worked there together. There was another technician there that was actively in vet school and another that was applying to vet school. And so I am very, very thankful for that first kennel tech job to this day, because I think it provided me with at least the baseline knowledge of the things that I needed to start applying to vet school or looking into vet school, or just those things that go, again, beyond that surface level of just the vet school application.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your Instagram, which is how we found you and why we felt the need to have you on here. Because A, you're just so interesting to talk to, and I love watching all of your content because I think we were talking about it previously, but it's really important to find a nice balance between showing the public what we do on a day-to-day basis, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the puppies and kitties, not real doctors, all of that. So showing them kind of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and it's not always pretty, and it's not always just the wellness appointments. is really important to me. And, it's not something I've had the privilege to be engaged in as a student because of social media policies and etc. And I just wanted to know what inspired you to start talking about it and start showing the realness of what you do every day.
Yeah. I struggled with, or I went back and forth for the longest time about making an Instagram. I wanted to start when I was in vet school, but of course, similarly to you guys, we had very strict social media policies. So when I would post myself with an animal, I'd cover the face, like I'd have to get permission from the owner, then I'd still have to cover the face of the animal, and it just kind of not takes away, but it just kind of doesn't give you the umph that you kind of want the post to have. And I honestly kind of got swallowed in clinicals and all of the things. And so I just never got around to making a separate Instagram. But I always got such a positive response, even when I would post things from the clinic that I was working at on my personal Instagram. And everyone just really liked keeping up with me. And so I just kind of said one day, I'm going to do it. And I think that there's so much hesitation that comes with social media, especially being in the medical field on social media, because it opens the floor for anybody to say anything, for anybody to misconstrue anything that you're doing, especially with me being in rural, large animal medicine as well. There are so many things that we do in large animal medicine that are different from small animals. I posted a video of me castrating a pig, and it kind of got on the wrong side of Instagram, and people were like, why is the pig moving? And I'm like, well, honestly, in 40% of other places, they don't even sedate these things. So you have those moments still where you wish people would understand. But I think that when I decided to start my Instagram, I knew that I didn't want it to be puppies and rainbows all the time. Like, I just knew that I wanted to show people what rural mixed animal medicine looks like. It's not pretty. And there are some days where I work 16 hours and then I'm on call and I have to be back at the clinic after sleeping for 4 hours. But at the end of the day, I love what I do. And I hope that that is always the core of what shines on my Instagram. But I never want to fake it for social media. I always told myself, if I put myself out there, it's going to be wholeheartedly. I've gotten such a positive response, and I'm very thankful that I just went ahead and decided to do it. But I think I just really woke up and told myself one day, I think I just want to start putting myself out there.
I know that there are people who are really interested, especially pre-vets. They love to see, I loved to see, I was just a pre-vet a year ago. I'm not, saying anything bad, but pre-vets love to see what their future is going to look like and all of the different possibilities. I'm not the only person at LSU with a vet focused Instagram. I'm not the only person on the internet with a vet focused Instagram. When it gets really big and you have people not in veterinary medicine seeing your content, like you said, that can be scary. Or even just people in veterinary medicine and being like, putting yourself out there and saying, this is kind of scary. I don't really want my peers to judge me. Or, for example, a professor of mine knew my name and I had never introduced myself. And I was like, why do you know me? Did I do something bad? Did it, like, my thing get reported? Like, that was my first thought. Obviously, nothing probably bad. I don't know why he knew that. But it's just, those are the thoughts that kind of run through my head. I get a little scared with social media and misunderstanding, and it doesn't matter what field you're in, there's going to be conflict. If everybody had the same opinion, we wouldn't do what we do. But I think it's interesting and fun to post. So if you're thinking about starting one, start one. I don't know. I think I started mine the night before I started vet school, and I was like terrified for no reason. I was like, I have Instagram. It's not like I'm doing something new. I'm just making a new account. I'd run APVMA national accounts. I'd run multiple, like most of my club positions were running social media. So I don't know why I was so terrified, but same thing. I was just like, no, I'm just going to do it at like midnight the night before school. And I was already nervous and I thought that was a great idea. And then here we are. And so it's just inspiring to see other people thrive on social media and keep it positive and not let all of the misconceptions and possible hate or negativity get to them and stop posting or doing what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very scary, but I think what's even scarier too is all of the misinformation online in the veterinary world. And so I do think a part of my platform is used to try to just educate people. Like 90% of my following are other veterinary professionals or maybe people who are pre-vet or things like that. But if by chance some of my content comes across people who are pet parents or owners or things like that, I want them to also be educated on the things that we do, because Facebook, let me tell you, Facebook is constantly putting out crazy things like scaling your own dog's teeth at home and just crazy stuff. So I think it's just very important also to use your platform for the good of the general population.
I love you talking about misinformation because I see so much of it on Facebook and it drives me insane. Or people think that they know more than you because they saw a TikTok from someone who doesn't have a degree. And you don't need a degree to know a lot. Access to education is difficult. You could use ChatGPT to break down a research paper if you don't understand the research paper to summarize it. Double check though. You could watch YouTube videos posted by doctors. So thank you for contributing good information. I'd love to hear about how you operate this account within your practice and also like the team culture of your practice.
Yeah, so I work at a very large practice. And I think one of the reasons that I decided to stay at the practice after my internship was just the true mentorship that I got there. And I think mentorship is such almost like a trigger word in veterinary medicine, because I think a lot of people want a mentor and they hear you should have a mentor, but what does that really mean to a lot of people? And I think that's kind of what I push people to figure out, especially when these pre-vet, now that I've created the social media, when these pre-vet students come to me and ask me to be their mentor, I kind of tell them to take a step back and say, well, what are you looking for in a mentor? What does mentor mean to you? And then you tell me, and then let's see if our goals align, because I would love to be that for you, but I also want to make sure that you know what it is that you are looking for. And so I think that I had to kind of figure that out for myself during my intern year. But I think that the reason again that I stayed after my internship at the practice that I'm at is because it really does feel like a team. And there are good things and bad things about every practice, but there are so many doctors. I think we have 15 doctors total, 15 to 16 doctors total at my practice. There are a lot of doctors that I can ask for anything at any point, especially during my intern year where I felt like a chicken with my head cut off. And, I was drinking from a fire hose and all of the things. I felt like there were multiple doctors at all points that I could call at 2 a.m. when I had a calf stuck and I couldn't get it out. And they were going to come up there and help me. And so I do think that that is very, very important, especially as a young veterinarian practicing crazy rural mixed animal medicine. Like, I think there's so many things that honestly could go wrong with that and just learning traditional medicine and all of these crazy things. But I think that all of us do our best to keep each other on our toes and push each other to be our best selves. Luckily, when I started my Instagram, I had 2 years worth of content already because I'm just someone who loves to whip out my phone or take a picture or take a bit, especially of like all the wounds and things that I have, just for me to look back on myself. And so I think that that's maybe what made my process into social media a little bit more seamless, because I already had all of these things. And I genuinely do love being creative. I think that I am very chronically online. And so I see a lot of these like TikTok trends or things like that. And I'm like, how can I make this vet med? Because that is one goal of my page too. Is like, I think I'm the funniest person in the world. So, I love to keep myself on my toes. And I love to like see trends where people are talking about their toxic boyfriend. And I'm like, how can I make this about vet med? So I think I'm constantly like pushing myself to be better, especially when it comes to social media. And I'm doing all of it on my own. So it's a lot of work. But again, luckily, I have a lot of content that I can pull from. And there's days where I'll just scroll through my pictures and I'm like, I specifically remember this case from a year and a half ago. I need to post about it. So I think that is what makes it at least a little bit easier for me to kind of be on social media.
And I just had some logistics questions. I don't know what the clinic's social media policy is. Is it just kind of like, oh, if it's livestock, it's probably fine, or if it's a pet, no identifiers? What does that look like? Do you ask each client, or do you just kind of, it's in the new client paperwork and it's whatever? What does that look like?
Yeah. So if it is a picture of something like a wound or there's no identifiers, typically, if it's gonna be something gross or it's a sensitive situation, then I ask the owner. And if there are identifiers, like I'm posting the animal's face or they may have their name on their collar or things like that, then I'm definitely asking the owner. Our clinic doesn't do social media. My clinic is run by 3 white men in their 50s. So they all hate social media, to be honest with you. And I'm the first one, I think, that has come in their clinic and been kind of all about social media. So it's very new for them. And so I think I take it upon myself to chat with clients like, hey, I have an Instagram. This was a really cool case. Do you mind if I post about it? Just because they, and they have a Facebook. Facebook is for, I think, the 40 plus mainly. But, I think they don't really post much on their Facebook. So I kind of take it upon myself to say, okay, if I'm going to put something out here on social media, I would hate for an owner to see it and would have not wanted me to post it, especially with sensitive situations like the animal ended up being euthanized or the animal is still sick or things like that. So I try to mainly post about the things that the animal is doing well. But if it's a situation that is kind of a little sensitive, most of the time I just won't post about it, or I will like take a picture of one specific thing, like maybe the animal's paw or something, and be like, had a really tough case, and that way I'm not saying anything specifically about that animal, and I'm trying to educate people but also be sensitive to the owners.
You mentioned the owners of the clinic being, older white men, and it's an interesting point because I'd written down on here, even though the field is now, I don't know, 80 plus percent female, leadership positions are still held by mostly men. Thoughts, concerns? Like, I don't know, I just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts, I think, about that specifically. I would love to see more women run clinics, specifically because I think there's just something empathetic about a woman, and there's just something understanding about a woman and open-minded about a woman. And not to say I'm like sexist or anything, but I just also think there are a lot of traditional views that naturally come with a 50 to 60 plus year old white male running a company, especially in a rural part of Texas. And so you can imagine how awkward things feel at times, especially as a Black woman, and especially during certain interactions with clients or things like that. Do I 100% expect all of my bosses to have my back at every point? I'd love to say yes, but I think as a Black woman in vet med, I've kind of had to learn to have my own back when it comes to these things. And that's nothing on my bosses specifically. I think they're great, but I think I also have to address the inherent kind of biases that are there.
Yeah, I know that there's just some nightmare situations. Rural Texas, old fashioned, I've heard it. I find myself, I don't know if it's because I was raised there or just general society, I don't know. But like sometimes I think about it and I'm like going into a practice and I'm like, oh, well, I want that vet. And then I might have gone to a new vet and I have like a young woman vet and I'm like, I don't know if I like her. And then I had to kind of sit down and think about it because I was like, why did I say that? She didn't do anything. And I just had to turn it around and say like, no, I bet she's awesome. And then when I thought about it, I was like, but why? Why don't I trust them as much? I never really quite placed it, but I was like, that's such an awful thing to think. And the fact that that's been beaten to us as women is upsetting, even though we're still a majority of the field. When you go to a vet, I feel that a lot of people, even people in vet school, even women in vet school, will still choose an older, more experienced, like straight white guy over a younger, new grad vet female. I don't know. It's just something interesting that I thought about here recently.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with majority of the population, to be honest with you. Like when I walk into a room, I think sometimes you just get that feeling of like this person's not going to trust anything I say, especially in large animal, because not only am I a woman, but I'm a black woman. And then I go out there and I tell a farmer that's been doing this for 20 plus years, maybe you should change this, or maybe this is what your cow got into. And they look at me like I'm the dumbest person in the world. And that is humbling, to say the least. And it's very upsetting. And it's just something that I think has forced me to toughen my skin. Honestly, it obviously comes from a place of ignorance, and I think it just forces me to stand my ground even more, because I am educated and I do know what I'm talking about. And you can choose to believe me or you can choose not to believe me, but my boss is going to come out here and tell you the same thing, and then maybe that'll kind of set it into stone for you. So I think I wish things were different, and I really don't foresee them changing, especially kind of in the area that I'm in specifically. It just sucks. It sucks. And then that med specifically, because I feel like me as a black woman, maybe I have a little bit of a different mindset, but like when I'm looking for a doctor or when I'm looking for like an OBGYN or I'm looking for anything, I'm like, I want a black doctor. I want someone who is gonna listen to me and is gonna understand me. And you know what? She can be straight out of school. And so I think that maybe my experience is just a little bit, maybe I'm looking at it from a little bit of a different lens. And I wish that maybe people, my least favorite thing to hear people say is, can I get an experienced vet? Or can I get a senior vet? And I'm just like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Like you know that people who are graduating school now are graduating with some of the most up-to-date information that there is in the world of veterinary medicine. Yeah. So it's tough. It is tough.
Yeah. And I've seen it in practice. Same kind of scenario, rural vet med, straight white guy owner, and he hires a new grad, and it's usually a woman because we're majority female now. And I know I've watched it happen in front of my eyes because I worked at that clinic. And even when I wasn't working there, I was there with my pets. And so there was specific times where the 5'2" tiny little like new grad veterinarian female would come out and work on something in the barn, and then the people that were there would say, well, where's the other doctor? Okay, well, she's here for a reason and he hired her for a reason. Like, she is competent, she is skilled, and she knows what she's doing. But then they would make all of these comments, even if they were accepting of her and letting her do what she needed to do. Then you get all the comments. Well, you're just so tiny. Like, I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you're palpating this cow when you're so tiny and you're such a woman. Like, those are the comments that drive me crazy. And this is a totally different experience. I'm not comparing it to being a black woman or being a black woman in veterinary medicine, but I grew up in a 75% Hispanic town, and I got told I was too white to work where I was working at. Like, it is universal, it is females, it's just a mess. Like, all of this is just a mess, and I wish people, even if you think that and you need to go home and rethink that, maybe just don't say it out loud. There was no reason that you needed to tell 16-year-old Michaelan, well, you're too white to work here. What does that mean? Hey. And I know that I'm not the only person that has an experience like that. So, regardless of your situation, there's always somebody out there that's gonna not trust you, prey on your downfall, like for whatever reason. I don't know. Everybody's got their biases, and it's just an interesting topic to talk about because you could go on forever, especially in veterinary medicine or doctors in general, because people have a certain trust level with the traditional image of a doctor. And if you don't meet that, then they're not going to trust you. So
I'd like to talk about something related to that too. So, we just recently spoke to Dr. Bailey, who's the president of the AVMA, and in our conversation after the episode ended, I asked what made him want to run for his position. And this is public information too, so don't worry, we can share this. He said he had gone up as far as he could in the AVMA in his state level, and he was looking at the field and how far he could go. And he said there has never been a black AVMA president. And I ran because that needed to change. And I felt his tone and I felt the weight of his words. And it's not just like that dare to dream, it's this pressure because we see that ignorance all the time when you're the young veterinarian who doesn't represent their normal, typical rural veterinarian. You automatically are hit with bias, and he wants to change that. I would love to hear if you have ever felt pressure to have to go above and beyond a normal veterinarian because of how you look.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really goes back to the saying that are like a black woman has to work twice as hard for the exact same result. I think that I've never felt that more until I got into rural mixed animal medicine, to be honest with you. And I don't know if I would have felt that same way going into a small animal practice in a metropolitan area, where people are maybe more used to seeing at least some diversity. But where I'm at is a very small town, and it is even the people the staff, are very small town minded. They don't leave their small town. They still know everyone they went to high school with and all of the things. And so it was a very, very much so a culture shock for me. And I do feel like, especially during my intern year, where there were times where I probably was second guessing myself a lot, I had to go above and beyond to, again, prove the exact same thing that my boss would have done. And you can just hear people not trusting you. And I think at first I would cower. At first I would be like, okay, you're probably right. We'll try this your way. But then I had to realize, like, no, I deserve to have space in this field, and I deserve to have space in this clinic, and I deserve to have space in the large animal realm, because I'm capable of this. And so I think it just came with a mindset shift for me and kind of gave me the determination to prove people wrong. So it was one of those things where, I am going to take all the large animal cards for today because I need to prove to people and to prove to our client base, our large animal client base, that I am competent. And I hate that it has to be that way. I hate that I have to overwork myself to prove myself, but it's one of those things where I feel like there may be no other way, especially in the part of town that I'm in, unfortunately.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about today before we start wrapping up?
I think this has been honestly a really good talk just about experiences as a black woman in vet med. I hope that people watch this and get a little bit more insight to not only the inaccessibility and how hard it is really, but also to show you that you really can do it.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on. I know I was kind of scared. I talked to people in my class about it because I was like, I need somebody to give me permission to, this isn't my space. I am not a black woman. I am not any minority. You know what I mean? Gretel and I represent the largest demographic in the field. So I felt a little uncomfortable saying, okay, well, I'm not trying, we don't monetize off this. We don't even really get a lot of views. We're genuinely doing this to, promote Black veterinarians and how awesome just everybody can be. And it's Black History Month, and it just seemed like a nice little setup. So thank you for coming on and giving us the opportunity to do that, because like I said, I was a little scared. I was like, people are going to tell me that this isn't my place. This isn't what I should be doing, and it's not about me. I wasn't trying to make it about me. So I'm really grateful that you would come on and talk about everything with us. And one thing that we're going to start doing as of this episode is kind of ending off with a little positivity boost, especially after such a heavy topic. And we couldn't decide between a couple, so we were going to let you choose. And we just have silly little questions, but we'll let you choose which one, and then we'll just do that for the rest of our episodes, if that's cool with you. Yeah, so we have what's bringing you joy today, something simple, open-ended, whatever you want. What's something good about veterinary medicine right now? Or if you want to get even simpler, what's your favorite song right now? Just something positive to wrap up all of our episodes with, and we just thought you would be able to choose one for us.
Yeah. Let's do the first. I think the first is good.
All right. Well, what's bringing you joy today?
So, what's bringing me joy is I'm actually at home in Nashville for the weekend. It's my niece's third birthday. It is so crazy how time flies. And I am just such a family girl. And it has been honestly very hard being away from my family in Texas. But it makes me really value the time that I spend at home more. So really just my heart is just full being home, being with my niece, being with my family. So that made me happy, really happy today.
All right, well, thank you again. And what is your Instagram? Where can people find you?
You can find me at lex.thevet. Play on words. So lex.thevet on Instagram, Dr. Alexia Wade. My DMs are always open to anyone who has any questions at any point. My email is also in my bio. So feel free to shoot me a DM, follow me, send me an email. I'm a one-woman show, so I may not get back to you immediately, but I will.
All right, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.